Ravenscourt Manor stood as the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco lines gleamed under winter moonlight, its polished mahogany panels and velvet curtains framing a post-Christmas gathering of the elite. Guests played their refined roles amid hothouse lilies and lingering champagne. Then Sir Reginald Harrington, the wealthy host, was found dead in the locked library. Throat slit in a dramatic pool of blood, the room in elegant disarray, as if a struggle had overturned crystal decanters and scattered fine papers. Police saw a botched burglary by an outsider who fled into the snow. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theatre of wealth was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. The grand drawing-room of Ravenscourt Manor shimmered with Art Deco elegance on the evening of January 6th, Twelfth Night. Polished mahogany tables reflected the warm glow of crystal chandeliers, their tinkling light dancing across silk evening gowns and crisp linen napkins. The air carried the rich scent of strong continental coffee, mixed with expensive Chanel perfume, and faint wood smoke from the crackling fire. Outside, snow blanketed the terrace, its chill night air pressing against frost-laced windows. Sir Reginald Harrington had invited a select cast for a post-Christmas house party. The widower, known for his sharp business acumen and sharper tongue, had declared it a time for settling accounts among family and friends. Guests included his elegant daughter, Lady Evelyn, his resentful nephew, Victor Lang, the charming family solicitor, Mr. Arthur Blake, the mysterious widow, Mrs. Clara Voss, and the young artist, Miss Lydia Crane, who painted portraits with unsettling insight. Each moved with practiced grace across the parquet floors, their footsteps echoing softly. The discovery came just after midnight. A piercing scream shattered the distant piano music. Servants and guests rushed to the library, where the door yielded only after forceful effort. Inside, Sir Reginald lay sprawled near the overturned desk, his throat brutally slit. Blood stained the smooth crystal glass beside him, and pooled on the cold marble hearth. The room smelled of fresh flowers wilting in their vases, and the metallic tang of violence. Papers were scattered as if rifled through, yet valuable items remained untouched. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard arrived swiftly, his rough tweed coat dusted with snow. "Looks like a burglary gone wrong," he muttered, examining the forced window latch. The snow outside shows no clear footprints leading away. Too drifted. But the cast of characters gathered in the warm drawing-room performed their roles with varying conviction. Lady Evelyn dabbed dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. Victor paced, his hands steady despite claims of shock. Mrs. Voss clutched a glass of sweet liqueur, her cologne of sandalwood lingering. Hercule Poirot arrived the next morning by train from London, his small hands adjusting his impeccable attire against the chill. The Belgian detective surveyed the stage with gleaming green eyes. "Mon ami Japp, this is no simple burglary. Observe the symmetry disrupted here. The overturned chair placed just so, the papers arranged in deliberate chaos. The stage is dressed for an audience." He tilted his egg-shaped head, touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. "You watch with Poirot, no? See how Lady Evelyn's shoulders shake appropriately, yet her mascara remains perfect. Ask yourself, why does grief arrive so rehearsed? The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Poirot directed the initial examination. The library's velvet curtains hung undisturbed, except near the window. Expensive perfume clung to a dropped glove. Chanel, belonging to Mrs. Voss. Furniture wax gleamed on untouched surfaces, while the grandfather clock chimed solemnly, its sound mingling with the crackle of the fire in the adjacent room. Hot coffee was served to steady nerves, its bitter taste cutting through the lingering champagne from the night before. Each suspect played their part. Victor spoke of Uncle's recent will changes with forced loyalty. Mr. Blake offered legal details smoothly, his kid gloves smooth against the leather-bound books. Miss Crane sketched the scene quietly, her rough tweed skirt brushing the floor. "The psychology, it is everything," Poirot murmured, arranging objects on a side table symmetrically. Hercule Poirot sees the performances. The mask slips. Did you catch it? Watch Victor's eyes when he mentions money. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. As snow fell softly on the cold terrace, Poirot gathered the cast in the drawing room. The warm firelight played across faces, highlighting silk rustling and soft kid gloves twisting nervously. Mesdames et messieurs, the theatre of crime has one truth. Every actor eventually forgets their lines. He made an expressive gesture with his small hands. "We shall observe closely." Inspector Japp shook his head. "Poirot, it's straightforward." Outsider broke in. But Poirot smiled faintly, his green eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Mais non, mon ami. The stage was set long before the curtain rose on death." The players had taken their places amid the scents of cigar smoke from the previous evening and fresh lilies in crystal vases. The drawing-room felt alive with unspoken tensions, the chill from open doors contrasting the fire's warmth. Poirot drew himself up to his full, still small, height. "This performance, it intrigues me. Consider the psychology. What role does each person need to play in this elegant drama? And if you are hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence?" By evening, the house settled into uneasy quiet. Doors closed softly down corridors lined with Art Deco mirrors. The grandfather clock chimed again, marking time in this confined theatre. Poirot retired to his room, the smooth crystal of a water glass cool in his hand. The stage was set. The actors had taken their places. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players' formal interviews unfolded as carefully staged scenes in the sunlit morning room of Ravenscourt Manor. Polished mahogany desk gleamed under pale winter light, filtering through velvet curtains, while the air held the comforting scent of strong continental coffee and lingering cigar smoke from the previous evening. Poirot sat as director, his small hands arranging pens with precision on the crisp linen blotter. The footsteps on parquet announced each player's entrance, their echoes mingling with the distant grandfather clock chiming the hour. Lady Evelyn entered first, her silk gown rustling softly against the cold marble threshold. She performed dignified grief with practiced poise, dabbing at dry eyes with a crisp linen handkerchief while speaking of her father's difficult nature. "Family bonds endure even in tragedy," she declared, yet her gaze avoided the leather-bound will documents on the table. "Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theatre?" Victor Lang followed, his rough tweed jacket a stark contrast to the room's Art Deco elegance. He claimed steadfast loyalty to his uncle, pacing with measured agitation as he mentioned recent will changes and mounting debts. His cologne of sandalwood mixed with the faint furniture wax scent, but his hands remained oddly steady when questioned about the terrace walk. "You watch with Poirot, no? You see how this one's hands tremble slightly when alibis are questioned? Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me. Mr. Arthur Blake, the family solicitor, offered rehearsed cooperation with smooth precision. His kid gloves lay neatly folded beside him as he detailed legal matters, voice never wavering on the subject of planned inheritance adjustments. The performance of helpfulness flowed without pause, yet he sidestepped any mention of specific beneficiaries with subtle redirection. The mask slips. Did you catch how his gaze flickers toward the fireplace ashes? Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. Mrs. Clara Voss glided in next, her trailing, expensive Worth perfume that blended with the room's hothouse lilies in crystal vases. The widow spoke warmly of her friendship with Sir Reginald, clutching a glass of sweet liqueur as if to steady unseen nerves, her eyes remaining dry despite claims of profound shock. She described the evening's champagne toasts with fond recall, yet her fingers twisted a soft kid glove in silent tension. Ask yourself, why does she avoid his eyes when the topic turns to late-night coffee? Miss Lydia Crane arrived last, her artist's hands faintly stained with charcoal against her rough tweed skirt. She performed wide-eyed innocence while sketching idly on a notepad, answering questions about her portrait sessions with Sir Reginald in detached tones. He seemed tense that night, she offered, yet her observations lingered too precisely on others' movements. Consider the psychology. What role does this person need to play? If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform such artistic detachment? Poirot noted each contradiction as a missed cue in the unfolding drama. Lady Evelyn's claim of solitude in her room clashed with a servant's recollection of silk rustling near the library corridor. Victor's terrace alibi left no matching footprints in the drifted snow outside, while Blake's paperwork session lacked any confirming witness. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer? Mrs. Voss's early retirement story faltered against the memory of hot coffee fetched near midnight, its bitter taste still recalled by the staff. Miss Crane's sketching alibi felt conveniently timed, her charcoal lines capturing details no innocent bystander should have noticed. Each role solidified under scrutiny. Evelyn as the grieving daughter masking possible relief, Victor as the loyal nephew veiling resentment, Blake as the helpful solicitor concealing calculations. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how these performances strain at the edges. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. Observe, mon ami, this suspect plays their role too perfectly. His green eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he made an expressive gesture with his small hands. Hercule Poirot is not deceived by such theatre. Sensory details sharpened every exchange. The taste of rich coffee offered between scenes to steady fraying nerves, the chill draught from the terrace door contrasting the warm fire in the adjacent grate, and the soft champagne cork pop echoing in memory from Twelfth Night. Leather chairs creaked under shifting weight, while rain began pattering gently on the windows, adding rhythm to the enclosed psychological stage. Chapter 3. The First Act. Deeper investigation moved into the shadowed corners of Ravenscourt Manor, like turning pages in a well-rehearsed script. Poirot examined the library once more under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, their tinkling light catching on velvet curtains and scattered papers, and the forced window showed clear signs of staging. Glass cut cleanly from the inside, the latch disturbed only after the fact. A fragment of a burned letter recovered from the fireplace ashes spoke of financial pressures and a hastily altered will, its edges still warm from the dying embers. The air carried the mingled scents of wilting hothouse lilies, furniture wax, and faint cigar smoke. During a private confrontation in the morning room, a mask slipped for the first time. Victor Lang, pressed on timeline gaps between his terrace walk and the scream, faltered visibly. His performed loyalty cracked as real anger surfaced, shoulders shaking with genuine fear rather than rehearsed shock. "I needed the money. Debts from bad investments, you understand," he admitted, voice rising unsteadily. Hot coffee sat untouched before him, its rich aroma contrasting the chill draught seeping from the terrace doors. The director method, the performance. Victor played the aggrieved nephew with convincing agitation, pacing the polished parquet and gesturing broadly as grief and resentment mingled in his words. The tell, but observe. His hands remained remarkably steady when reaching for the cigar case on the table, no tremor despite the claimed distress of sudden loss. A truly shocked man fumbles small objects. The psychology. I am reminded of the Ackroyd affair, where a man performed shock so convincingly that even I, Hercule Poirot, was momentarily deceived. He had rehearsed in mirrors for hours, practicing the widening of eyes, the dropping of the jaw at precisely the right moment, and the appropriate catch in the voice. Every gesture was calculated to perfection. Yet he made one fatal error. When the news was delivered, he reached for his cigarette case with hands too steady, too controlled. A man genuinely stunned by murder does not possess such composure. The body betrays what the mind rehearses. Micro-movements, slight hesitations, involuntary tremors, the way breath catches or fails to, reveal the truth long before words do. This is what the little grey cells understand so well. The psychology beneath the polished performance, the ancient language of the flesh that no actor can fully silence. In that case, the murderer's steady hand wrote his own condemnation even as his face wore perfect sorrow. Here too, the pattern repeats. The truth, therefore, Victor knew far more than he first admitted about the will and the night's events. His performance of innocent distress now cracks under pressure. As you see it now, no. The theatre crumbles when the body forgets its lines. The first revelation sent ripples through the cast. Lady Evelyn's silk gown rustled as she overheard fragments, her dry-eyed grief showing new strain. Mrs. Voss clutched her soft kid gloves tighter, sandalwood cologne sharpening in the warm drawing-room air. Mr. Blake's smooth legal demeanour tightened, while Miss Crane's charcoal-stained fingers paused over her sketch-pad. Rain pattered steadily on the windows, adding a rhythmic underscore to the growing tension. The grandfather clock chimed solemnly, marking the progression of this unfolding drama. Poirot pressed further, testing alibis against fresh evidence. A servant recalled hearing silk rustling near the library shortly before the scream, clashing with Evelyn's solitude claim, and the taste of bitter medicine lingered on one guest's breath, hinting at nerves stretched thin. Cold marble floors in the hallway contrasted sharply with the fire's comforting warmth in the main rooms. Reflection. In this elegant theatre of Ravenscourt, we witness how masks serve as essential costumes for survival. Humans don them to shield raw vulnerability, greed dressed as grief, resentment wrapped in loyalty, fear cloaked as confidence. Society itself writes the script, demanding the dutiful daughter, the grateful nephew, the helpful friend. Yet beneath the silk and tweed, true motives pulse like hidden stage directions. Why do we perform rather than simply be? Because truth exposes us to judgment, to loss, to the discomfort of being fully seen. In the spirit of Twelfth Night, where disguise and revelry blur lines, him these masks both conceal and inadvertently reveal. I recall the tragic affair at the Grand Hotel on the Riviera, where a seemingly devoted wife played her role with flawless elegance. Her smiles were polished to brilliance, her tears timed like clockwork during public condolences, and her every gesture a study in perfect widowhood. She moved through candlelit dinners and champagne toasts, as if grief were her natural state. Yet when she believed herself unobserved in the quiet hours, her face relaxed into something cold and calculating, fingers steady as she sorted hidden documents. The little grey cells noted the stark discrepancy between her public performance and those private moments. She forgot her lines in a single unguarded instant of triumph, reaching too quickly for a concealed letter. Any past cases teach that deception eventually fatigues even the most skilled actor. The body grows weary of maintaining the lie. Small betrayals accumulate until the mask can no longer hold. Universally, deception thrives because it offers temporary safety. Yet truth possesses a quiet persistence that no rehearsal can defeat. Masks allow us to navigate social stages, but pressure and scrutiny cause them to slip. Theatrical wisdom for you, dear listener. Watch not only the grand gestures under the spotlight, but the quiet moments when the lights dim and the actor thinks no one watches. Who relaxes into their authentic self? In this drama at Ravenscourt, the first mask has cracked. More will surely follow as truth takes command of the stage. The first act concluded. Some masks had cracked. On Chapter 4, Rehearsed Lines. Poirot began to pressure the cast with deliberate precision, turning the morning room into a stage for strained performances. Polished mahogany surfaces reflected the pale winter light, while velvet curtains framed the tense scene. The air carried the rich aroma of fresh coffee and faint traces of expensive perfume mixed with wood smoke from the newly lit fire. Footsteps on parquet floors sounded heavier now, as each suspect entered for individual questioning. He started with Lady Evelyn. Her silk gown rustled as she sat, dabbing at eyes that remained suspiciously dry. Poirot tested her alibi of solitude in her room. A servant heard silk rustling near the library corridor shortly before the scream, he said calmly. Her shoulders stiffened, the performance of grief growing noticeably strained, and the mask slips. Did you catch that slight hesitation in her voice? Next came Victor Lang. His rough tweed jacket seemed rumpled under the pressure. Poirot confronted him about the terrace walk and the absence of matching footprints in the drifted snow. Debts explain much, mon ami, but not everything, Poirot remarked, watching Victor's steady hands falter when reaching for a glass of water. Rehearsed lines about loyalty began to crack as real resentment flickered in his eyes. Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theatre? You watch with Poirot, non? See how the confident stride has become uncertain steps. Mr. Arthur Blake followed, his kid gloves laid aside with forced calm. The solicitor's smooth explanations of the will now met direct challenges. Helpful men do not destroy documents in fireplaces, surely? Poirot asked, and producing the reconstructed fragments. Blake's voice remained level, but his fingers trembled slightly against the leather-bound ledger. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth does not rehearse. Mrs. Clara Voss entered trailing Worth perfume that now seemed cloying in the warm room. She clutched a sweet liqueur, claiming continued shock from the night's events. Poirot pressed on her late-night movements and the dropped Chanel glove near the library. her charming widow performance turned defensive, eyes darting toward the cold terrace door. Ask yourself, why does helpfulness suddenly become evasion? The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Miss Lydia Crane arrived last, charcoal-stained fingers gripping her sketchpad like a shield. Her wide-eyed artistic innocence faced scrutiny over the precise details she had captured. An innocent bystander does not notice quite so much, mademoiselle, Poirot observed. Her rough tweed skirt brushed the floor as she shifted uncomfortably. Consider the psychology. What role does this person need to play? If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform such detachment? Alibis were tested relentlessly as flawed scripts. Evelyn's solitude claim collapsed further when a second servant confirmed seeing her near the library. Victor's terrace story contradicted the snow patterns and timing of the grandfather clock chimes. Blake's paperwork session lacked any reliable witness, while Voss's early retirement tale clashed with staff recollections of hot coffee being fetched near midnight. Crane's sketching alibi felt increasingly convenient, especially with her drawings showing details only someone close to the crime could know. If false performances exposed themselves under the spotlight. A second burned letter, partially reconstructed, hinted at blackmail involving art dealings and the will. Poirot arranged objects on the table symmetrically as he spoke. Rehearsed lines, they begin to falter when the prompter is silent, he murmured, touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. His green eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Hercule Poirot seized the strain beneath the makeup. The warm drawing-room fire crackled in contrast to the chill night air, seeping through window cracks. Rain pattered steadily on the glass, adding a restless rhythm to the interviews. The taste of rich coffee turned bitter on nervous tongues, while distant piano music from the music room had fallen silent. Soft kid gloves twisted, silk rustled with every uneasy movement, and the smooth crystal decanter reflected strained faces. We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer? The careful observer will notice how each actor's gestures grow smaller, more guarded. Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands. Observe, mon ami, the performances become thinner. Truth needs no rehearsal, but lies always do. By late afternoon, the cast showed visible wear. Lady Evelyn's elegant poise had frayed. Victor's resentment leaked through louder. Blake's legal precision slipped into vague deflections. Voss's charm turned sharp. Crane's artistic calm developed cracks. The stage no longer felt elegant. It felt confining. Every chandelier tinkle and door closing softly, amplifying the pressure. Rehearsed lines began to falter. The script was failing. Through Chapter 5, the mask slips. The major confrontation unfolded in the library itself, the very stage of the crime, now heavy with tension under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Velvet curtains framed the scene, while the air carried the mingled scents of wilting hothouse lilies, lingering furniture wax, and the metallic memory of dried blood on the cold marble hearth. Poirot had gathered Mrs. Clara Voss alone for what he called the final rehearsal. Hot coffee steamed in fine porcelain cups, its rich aroma cutting through the chill draught from the terrace doors. Rain continued its steady patter on the windows. Poirot began quietly, his small hands arranging a scattered paper symmetrically on the desk. Madame Voss, your performance as the charming grieving friend has been most elegant, he said, tilting his egg-shaped head. Ooh, the Worth perfume, the soft kid gloves, the perfect recall of champagne toasts. Yet one detail troubles Poirot. He produced the Chanel glove found near the body. It carries your scent, but you claim you retired early." Mrs. Voss clutched her glass of sweet liqueur, her smile faltering for the first time. I only wish to help," she replied, voice still polished. But her fingers twisted the glove too tightly. Poirot pressed deeper, revealing the reconstructed blackmail letter fragments that mentioned her secret financial dependence on Sir Reginald, and his threats to expose their affair. The mask began to crack. Her shoulders tensed beneath the silk gown, and her dry eyes suddenly glistened. "He promised me security," she whispered, the performance of devoted widow crumbling. Then he laughed and said he would cut me off like the others." Real emotion surged through, raw hate masked for so long as affectionate friendship. Her voice rose, no longer rehearsed. "He toyed with all of us." The director method, the performance, Mrs. Voss played the elegant, slightly mysterious widow with convincing poise, clutching her liqueur, speaking warmly of friendship, dabbing at non-existent tears with precise timing. The tell, but observe, when the affair was mentioned, her hand reached too steadily for the crystal glass, and her breathing remained controlled, even as her words claimed devastation. Genuine shock or rage produces visible tremors. Hers arrived only later, when the mask could no longer hold. The psychology. I am reminded of the case of the false widow in Monte Carlo, where a woman performed devoted mourning so beautifully that society applauded her courage. She wore black silk with perfect elegance, wept at the right moments during memorial services, and spoke of her late husband with trembling lips. Yet, in private, believing herself alone on the terrace, her face settled into cold triumph as she counted hidden banknotes. The little grey cells noted how her hands never shook when handling money, only when performing grief for an audience. She had rehearsed every sigh, every delicate handkerchief gesture, but the body betrayed her in unguarded seconds, steady fingers counting gains, while her voice still quivered in public. Such actors forget that guilt and obsession leave physical signatures no amount of rehearsal can erase. Here, Mrs. Voss followed the same pattern. The truth, therefore, her affection was obsession wearing the costume of love. She knew the threats Sir Reginald made. You see it now, no? The theatre crumbles when real feeling breaks through the paint. The emotional breakdown came suddenly. Mrs. Voss's shoulders shook with genuine sobs, mascara finally running in dark streaks down her powdered cheeks. "I hated him in the end," she confessed, voice raw and breaking. "He used people like props, promising everything, then discarding them when bored." The hate that had performed as loyalty now stood naked. Her hands trembled violently as she set down the glass, the sweet liqueur spilling slightly onto the polished mahogany. Poirot watched without triumph, his green eyes gleaming with understanding rather than satisfaction. The psychology, it is everything, madame. Greed performing as grief, a obsession performing as indifference, fear performing as charming confidence. You played your role well until the pressure became too great. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve and made an expressive gesture with his small hands. Beneath the elegant mask, the true face emerges at last. You watch with Poirot, no? See how the carefully controlled voice has shattered. Ask yourself, what role did she need to play to survive in this house of secrets? If you were hiding such hate, how long could you maintain the performance of affection? The other suspects waited anxiously in the drawing room. Silk rustled as Lady Evelyn paced near the fireplace. Victor's rough tweed shifted restlessly. Mr. Blake's kid gloves lay forgotten on a side table. Miss Crane's charcoal fingers gripped her sketchpad tightly. As the grandfather clock chimed, its solemn sound mingling with the crackle of the fire and the rain on windows. The warm drawing room now felt oppressive against the chill night air outside. This confrontation marked a turning point. One mask had fallen completely, revealing the raw emotion beneath the polished surface. Real feeling had broken through the rehearsal. Hate, fear, and relief all tangled together. The stage no longer held only actors. For one brief moment, a human being had stood exposed. The mask had fallen, the true face emerged. Chapter 6. Behind the Curtain. With one mask already fallen, Poirot drew back the velvet curtains to reveal the hidden backstage of Ravenscourt Manor. The drawing room, once elegant with its Art Deco gleam, now felt intimate and revealing under the soft light of crystal chandeliers. Of polished mahogany tables held forgotten glasses of sweet liqueur and strong continental coffee, their rich aromas mixing with the fading scent of hothouse lilies and lingering cigar smoke. The fire crackled warmly, contrasting the chill night air pressing against rain-streaked windows. Past secrets began to surface like forgotten props brought into the spotlight. Victor Lang's mounting debts were not simple bad investments. They stemmed from a secret partnership with Mr. Arthur Blake in a risky art speculation scheme. Forged documents, partially burned in the library fireplace, linked them both to Sir Reginald's changing will. Blake had quietly altered clauses to favour certain parties, while Victor provided insider pressure. Their performed loyalty to the family had masked deep financial resentment. Lady Evelyn's elegant grief hid a more personal truth. She had been secretly corresponding with a suitor her father strongly disapproved of, an artist of modest means. Letters hidden beneath crisp linen in her room revealed heated arguments with Sir Reginald on the night of the murder. Her silk gown had indeed rustled near the library, not from guilt over the killing, but from a desperate attempt to plead her case. Love had performed as dutiful indifference for years. Mrs. Clara Voss, still shaken from her earlier breakdown, confessed more under gentle pressure. Her affair with Sir Reginald had begun as genuine affection, but turned into obsession when he threatened to expose her past financial troubles. The dropped Chanel glove was no accident. She had visited the library late that night to beg for mercy, only to find him already dead. For fear had performed as charming widowhood, her worth perfume and sweet liqueur serving as costumes to maintain composure. Miss Lydia Crane's artistic detachment concealed the most dangerous secret of all. Her unsettling portraits had captured more than faces. They documented private conversations and unguarded moments. One sketch, found tucked behind a leather-bound book, showed Sir Reginald arguing violently with an unidentified figure. Crane admitted she had been blackmailing him subtly through her art, using the threat of exposure to secure a promised commission and legacy in the will. Her rough tweed and charcoal-stained hands had hidden a cunning mind that observed everything. Hidden connections wove the cast together like invisible stage wires. The Blake and Victor's financial scheme overlapped with Evelyn's forbidden romance and Voss's affair. Crane's sketches tied them all in a web of observation and leverage. The backstage of relationships revealed greed dressed as family loyalty, resentment performing as friendship, and obsession masked as artistic innocence. The grandfather clock chimed softly, its sound echoing through corridors lined with Art Deco mirrors that reflected strained faces. Poirot moved among them with quiet authority. touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully as he pieced together the puzzle. "Every actor in this drama has a secret," he murmured, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. "Behind the elegant performances lie motives as old as humanity itself." The warm firelight played across silk gowns and rough tweed, while soft kid gloves twisted nervously and crystal glasses reflected flickering flames. Reflection. In this theatre of Ravenscourt, we have pulled aside the curtain to see the machinery behind the performances. Humans wear masks not merely to deceive others, but to protect the fragile self from exposure. Greed performs as rightful inheritance, love as casual indifference, cunning as innocent observation. Society writes demanding scripts, dutiful daughter, loyal nephew, charming friend, forcing actors to rehearse roles that rarely match their true desires. Why do we choose performance over authenticity? Because truth carries risk, rejection, judgment, loss of status. Masks offer safety, control, and the comfort of familiar lines. Yet they exact a toll. The constant rehearsal exhausts the spirit, and the body eventually rebels with small betrayals, trembling hands, averted eyes, voices that crack under pressure. I recall the intricate case aboard the luxury liner Queen of the Adriatic, where passengers performed their social roles with exquisite precision during a glittering Atlantic crossing. A wealthy industrialist played the generous host, showering gifts and laughter while secretly plotting to eliminate a business rival. His wife performed devoted affection, her silk gowns and expensive perfume creating an image of marital bliss. The rival himself acted the carefree adventurer, toasting with dry champagne and telling amusing stories. Yet backstage, in the quiet hours between decks, motives clashed violently. The industrialist's steady hands when signing fatal papers betrayed him, just as his wife's perfectly timed smiles failed to hide her relief when the rival vanished. One passenger, believing herself unobserved on the moonlit promenade, allowed her face to relax into cold calculation while counting promised gains. The little grey cells noted every discrepancy between public theatre and private truth. Rehearsal could not silence the language of guilt, the slight hesitation before a toast, the way laughter rang false against the ocean wind. That floating stage taught the same lesson we see here. Hidden connections and secret motives always leave traces. No curtain is thick enough to hide them forever. Universally, deception promises control but delivers isolation. Every secret motive, no matter how well costumed, eventually presses against the mask until it slips. Theatrical wisdom for you. Dear listener, look behind the grand gestures and polished lines. The real drama plays in the quiet connections between characters. The shared glances, the avoided topics, the small kindnesses that feel rehearsed. In this house party turned theatre of crime, the backstage has been exposed. Behind every curtain, a secret, every secret, a motive. The revelations left the cast subdued. Silk rustled less confidently now. Rough tweed shifted with new unease. The warm drawing-room fire continued to crackle, but the air felt heavier with truth. Doors closed softly down the corridors as each player retreated to process the unmasking. Poirot stood alone for a moment, his green eyes gleaming with quiet understanding. The confined stage of Ravenscourt had yielded its hidden layers. Behind every curtain, a secret, every secret a motive. Chapter 7. The Final Act. The cast assembled in the grand drawing-room for the final performance, the stage set with deliberate theatrical precision. Crystal chandeliers tinkled softly overhead, casting warm light across polished mahogany tables and velvet curtains. The air was thick with the scent of strong continental coffee, fading hothouse lilies, and lingering wood smoke from the crackling fire. Rain pattered steadily against the windows, while the grandfather clock chimed solemnly, marking the hour of revelation. Each suspect sat in their accustomed place, Lady Evelyn in silk, Victor in rough tweed, Mr. Blake with kid gloves folded neatly, Mrs. Voss trailing Faintworth perfume, and Miss Lydia Crane clutching her sketchpad. Poirot stood before them as director, drawing himself up to his full, still small, height, and he adjusted his magnificent moustache with precision, and made an expressive gesture with his small hands. His green eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he surveyed the silent audience. "Mesdames et messieurs, you have each performed for Poirot. Some truthfully, some not. Let us review the performances, shall we?" He turned first to Lady Evelyn. "You played the grieving daughter with appropriate dignity. The silk gown rustled, the handkerchief dabbed at dry eyes, the shoulders shook on cue, but the grief, it was costume. A servant heard that silk near the library, not from guilt over murder, but because you argued with your father about your forbidden suitor. Your performance of dutiful mourning masked relief at his death. The tell was simple. The mascara never ran until truth forced it." Evelyn's face paled, her hands tightening on the crisp linen napkin in her lap. Poirot continued without pause. "Victor, you performed the loyal yet aggrieved nephew, pacing appropriately, speaking of debts with just enough resentment. But loyalty does not lie about terrace walks when the snow shows no footprints. Your steady hands when reaching for the cigar case betrayed you. The financial scheme with Blake required your uncle's removal. Greed performed as family duty." Victor shifted uncomfortably in his rough tweed, eyes dropping to the cold marble hearth. "Mr. Blake, your role was the helpful family solicitor. Smooth explanations, precise details about the will. Yet helpful men do not destroy incriminating papers in fireplaces. Your kid gloves stayed too clean while handling dirty secrets. The altered clauses favored your joint scheme with Victor, as the performance of professional loyalty masked calculation." Blake's fingers trembled slightly as he touched the leather-bound ledger beside him. "Mrs. Clara Voss, you gave the charming, devoted friend, clutching sweet liqueur, speaking warmly of affection. But devotion does not hide threats or drop scented gloves near the body. Your obsession with Sir Reginald turned to hate when he threatened exposure. The emotional breakdown revealed the true feeling beneath the elegant mask." Voss lowered her gaze, the Worth perfume suddenly seeming heavier in the warm room. "And so we come to our leading performer." Poirot paused dramatically, the fire crackling in the silence. All eyes turned to Miss Lydia Crane. "Miss Crane, you gave the most convincing performance of all, the innocent young artist sketching quietly with wide-eyed detachment, and the rough tweed, the charcoal-stained fingers, the artistic observations offered so helpfully. Magnifique! The shock at the scream, the useful details, the air of harmless observer. But you made one small error. One moment when the mask slipped." Crane's grip tightened on her sketchpad, her face still composed. "When describing the scream you heard, your hand reached for the charcoal with perfect steadiness, too calm for genuine horror. A true artist overwhelmed by violence would hesitate, tremble. But you had already seen the body, because you created the scene. The blackmail through your portraits, the promised legacy in the will, the need to silence Sir Reginald before he exposed your schemes. Your sketches captured too much. The psychology reveals it clearly. Cunning performed as innocence. Observation masked calculation. You killed to protect your secret empire of influence and secure your future. Crane's face drained of colour. For the first time, her artistic calm shattered. The sketch pad slipped from her fingers onto the parquet floor. The director method, applied to the murderer. The performance. Miss Crane played the innocent bystander with flawless restraint. Quiet sketching, helpful yet detached answers. Wide eyes full of concern. The tell, but observe. Her hands never shook when recounting the discovery. The body knows terror. Hers remained steady because she had rehearsed the moment in advance. The psychology. I am reminded of the case of the gallery murder in Paris, where a young painter performed shocked innocence so convincingly that even the police believed her. She wept at the right moments, sketched the crime scene with trembling lines for the detectives, and spoke of her mentor with trembling voice. Yet, when alone, her strokes became bold and confident. The little grey cells noticed how her charcoal never faltered when no audience watched. She had rehearsed every gesture of horror, but the steady hand that created the fatal wound could not fully pretend weakness. Guilt always betrays the actor through physical truth the mind cannot control. The truth. Therefore, the innocent artist was the director of death. You see it now, non? The theatre crumbles completely. Poirot's voice rose with quiet authority. The performance is over. The curtain falls. The truth, she takes her bow. Miss Lydia Crane murdered Sir Reginald Harrington to silence his threats and claim her promised legacy through manipulated art dealings and the altered will. The rest of you wore masks of varying conviction, but only one hand wielded the blade. The room fell into stunned silence. Silk rustled as Evelyn gasped. Victor exhaled sharply. Blake's legal composure broke. Voss covered her face. Crane sat frozen, the true face of calculated ambition finally exposed beneath the artistic mask. The spotlight of truth had fallen. No further lines could be spoken. The final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The final act had ended, and the drawing-room of Ravenscourt Manor felt suddenly smaller, stripped of its theatrical grandeur. Crystal chandeliers still tinkled softly overhead, but their light now seemed harsher on the unmasked faces. The fire crackled with less warmth, its wood smoke mingling with the fading scents of expensive Worth perfume, strong continental coffee, and wilting hothouse lilies. Rain continued its gentle patter against the windows, while the grandfather clock chimed once more, marking the transition from performance to consequence. The air carried a new chill, not just from the terrace doors, but from the raw exposure of truth. Miss Lydia Crane sat motionless in her chair, the rough tweed skirt and charcoal-stained fingers no longer part of an artistic costume, but the simple attire of a revealed murderer. Her wide-eyed innocence had vanished completely. In its place was a pale, strained face, eyes hollow with the weight of exposure, hands finely trembling as they rested in her lap, and the mask had not merely slipped, it had been torn away under Poirot's spotlight. She spoke no more rehearsed lines and dirty vowels. Only quiet, broken words emerged. He would have ruined everything. My work, my future. The obsession that had performed as detached observation now lay naked. Lady Evelyn rose slowly, her silk gown rustling with genuine exhaustion rather than performed grief. The dry-eyed daughter who had once dabbed at imaginary tears now allowed real emotion to surface. Relief mixed with lingering sorrow as she looked at her father's empty chair. I argued with him that night, she admitted softly, voice no longer polished, but I never wished him dead. Her forbidden romance, once hidden behind dutiful indifference, could now breathe in the open air. The transformation had begun. She stood taller, no longer forced to play the perfect grieving heiress. Victor Lang shifted in his rough tweed jacket, the resentment that had fueled his financial schemes draining away. His steady hands, once a tell of rehearsed loyalty, now fidgeted openly. The debts, the scheme with Blake, it consumed me, he confessed, voice rough with shame. Greed that had performed as rightful inheritance gave way to uncomfortable self-awareness. He would face legal consequences for his part in the forgery, but the unmasking offered a strange liberation. No more pretending to mourn an uncle he had both loved and resented. Mr. Arthur Blake sat rigidly, his kid gloves forgotten on the polished mahogany table. The smooth solicitor who had performed helpful professionalism now appeared diminished. "I altered the clauses for mutual gain," he said quietly, the legal precision gone from his tone. It seemed justified at the time. His calculated loyalty had masked ambition. Now justice would begin its slow work. The performance of the trustworthy adviser had ended, leaving a man forced to confront his own moral compromises. Mrs. Clara Voss clutched a soft kid glove in her lap, her elegant widow act long abandoned. The sweet liqueur she had used as a prop sat untouched, its taste suddenly bitter in memory. Tears, real ones, traced paths through the remnants of her makeup. "I hated what he became," she whispered, the hate that had performed as affection finally spoken without rehearsal. Her obsession and fear had driven her to the library that night, but not to kill. The emotional breakdown earlier had cleared the stage for honest grief and regret. She would carry the scandal, yet the truth freed her from the constant strain of charming deception. Poirot moved among them with quiet dignity, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve as he observed the transformations. "No applause for this performance," he said gently, his green eyes reflecting understanding rather than triumph. "Only justice. The theatre of crime has played its final scene. Each of you wore masks, some light, some heavy. Now they lie at your feet." Inspector Japp, who had remained silent during the revelation, now stepped forward with practical efficiency. Statements were taken, the murderer formally arrested. Crane rose without resistance, her artistic hands cuffed behind her back. She was led away. The distant sound of a door closing softly echoed through the corridors. No dramatic exit, only the quiet finality of consequence, and the drawing-room gradually emptied of its dramatic tension. Servants moved discreetly, clearing crystal glasses and straightening velvet cushions. The warm fire continued to burn, but the room felt different, less a stage for elegant deception, and more a simple country house returning to ordinary life. Snow had begun falling again outside, blanketing the terrace in fresh white, covering the earlier footprints and symbolic chaos. Evelyn approached Poirot, her silk gown now seeming simpler, less like a costume. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for seeing beyond the performances." Victor offered a nod of reluctant respect. Blake and Voss remained subdued, each processing the stripping of their roles. The psychology of revelation had worked its quiet magic. Guilt had betrayed the true actor, and while the others found space to reclaim their authentic selves. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head, touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. "The curtain call has come. The actors leave the stage, some freer, some facing judgment. Justice, she is not always kind, but she is necessary." He made a small expressive gesture with his hands. "You watched with Poirot, non? You saw how the masks weighed upon them. how truth, once spoken, lightens the burden even as it brings consequence. The house settled into uneasy peace. Footsteps on parquet faded. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm, no longer marking dramatic acts but ordinary time. The elegant Art Deco setting, once perfect for tragedy, now witnessed the quiet aftermath. No applause for this performance, only justice. As Chapter 9, after the show, the theatre of Ravenscourt Manor slowly emptied in the pale light of the following morning. Crystal chandeliers had been dimmed, their tinkling silenced, while the grand drawing-room returned to quiet dignity. Polished mahogany tables stood cleared of glasses and papers, the air now carrying only the faint scent of fresh coffee and lingering furniture wax. Outside, fresh snow blanketed the terrace and gardens, covering the traces of the previous night's drama. The chill night air had given way to a crisp, cold dawn that seeped through the frost-laced windows. Miss Lydia Crane had been taken away under police escort at first light. Her rough tweed skirt and charcoal-stained fingers no longer belonged to the innocent artist, but to a woman facing trial for murder, and the calculated ambition that had performed so convincingly as artistic detachment now stood fully exposed. In custody, her wide-eyed innocence had vanished completely, replaced by a quiet, resigned expression. The legacy she had killed to secure would never be hers. Justice had begun its measured work, stripping away the final remnants of her rehearsed role. Lady Evelyn underwent the most visible transformation. The elegant daughter, who had once performed grief with dry eyes, now moved through the house with genuine calm. Her silk gown seemed simpler, less like a costume of duty. She spoke openly of her forbidden suitor, no longer hiding the correspondence that had caused the final argument with her father. "I loved him," she told Poirot quietly over hot coffee in the morning room, "but I never wished father harm." Relief and quiet sorrow mingled in her voice. The mask of the perfect grieving heiress had been discarded. In its place emerged a woman ready to live authentically, free from the weight of societal expectations. She would inherit Ravenscourt and reshape its future with honesty rather than performance. Victor Lang's rough tweed jacket appeared less defiant as he packed his belongings. The resentment that had fueled his financial schemes with Blake had drained away, leaving room for uncomfortable self-reflection. "The debts blinded me," he admitted, his hands no longer steady with rehearsed loyalty, but trembling with genuine regret. He would face charges for his part in the forgery and altered will, yet the unmasking offered a strange second chance. A greed that had performed as rightful inheritance gave way to the possibility of redemption. Victor planned to leave England for a time, seeking distance from the family stage where he had played the aggrieved nephew for too long. Mr. Arthur Blake departed with quiet dignity, though his legal precision had lost its former smoothness. The kid gloves he once wore as a symbol of professional detachment now lay forgotten. His calculated assistance in the will changes had been exposed and consequences would follow, likely disbarment or worse. Yet the performance of the loyal solicitor had ended. In its place stood a man forced to confront his own moral failings. "I thought it was just business," he said softly before leaving. The backstage connections that had bound him to Victor were now severed by truth. And Clara Voss remained a little longer, her elegant composure returning in gentler form. The Worth perfume and sweet liqueur that had once masked obsession and fear no longer dominated her presence. Real tears had cleansed much of the performance. She spoke with Poirot on the cold terrace, the snow crunching underfoot. "I came seeking security and found only chains," she confessed. The hate that had performed as affection had been acknowledged. She would carry the scandal of the affair, but the emotional breakdown had freed her from the constant strain of charming deception. Clara planned to return to a quieter life, away from the glittering stages of wealthy society. Poirot observed these transformations with quiet satisfaction, tilting his egg-shaped head as he arranged a few remaining objects symmetrically on a side table. "Like the theatre has emptied," he murmured, touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. "Each actor leaves changed, some lighter, some heavier with consequence. The psychology of revelation works slowly but surely." His green eyes gleamed as he made a small expressive gesture with his small hands. "You watched with Poirot, no? You saw how the masks weighed upon their shoulders until truth lifted them." The manor itself seemed transformed. Once a perfect stage for elegant deception and post-Christmas revelry, it now breathed with simpler peace. Servants moved with natural ease, no longer performing for suspicious guests. The velvet curtains hung straighter, the parquet floors reflected ordinary daylight rather than dramatic chandeliers. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm, no longer marking acts and curtain calls, but the gentle passage of ordinary hours. Fresh flowers, new lilies, had been placed in crystal vases, their scent replacing the heavy atmosphere of the previous days. Evelyn walked with Poirot through the quiet corridors lined with Art Deco mirrors. "The house feels different," she said, "lighter somehow." He nodded, "because the performances have ended. Truth, she restores order and method to the soul, as well as to the scene." As the last guests departed, doors closed softly behind them. The taste of rich coffee shared in farewell carried a finality. The warm drawing-room fire had burned low, leaving comfortable embers. Snow fell steadily outside, whitening the landscape and burying the old footprints of suspicion. Poirot prepared to leave for London, his small suitcase packed with neat precision, and he had directed the drama to its necessary conclusion. The murderer had been revealed, the innocents had shed their unnecessary roles, and the hidden motives had been brought into the light. The psychology that had guided every step, the difference between performed emotion and genuine feeling, had triumphed once more. The theatre emptied. The lessons remained. Chapter 10. Poirot reviews the performance. Hercule Poirot sat comfortably in his London apartment, the soft afternoon light filtering through lace curtains onto the polished mahogany table. A steaming cup of tisane released its delicate herbal scent, mingling with the faint aroma of fresh flowers in a crystal vase, and the clean smell of furniture wax. Outside, the city hummed distantly, but inside, all was order and method. He had returned from Ravenscourt Manor 2 days earlier, with the case of death on Twelfth Night now neatly filed in his mind. The little grey cells had done their work once again. News of the characters' fates had reached him that morning. Miss Lydia Crane awaited trial, her calculated ambition fully exposed. The promising artist had become the central figure in a sensational murder case. Lady Evelyn had begun restoring the manor with quiet determination, her forbidden romance now openly acknowledged and bringing new warmth to the old house. Victor Lang had left for the continent to face his financial reckoning and perhaps find redemption. Mr. Blake's legal career hung in ruins, while Mrs. Clara Voss had retreated to a modest life in the south, free at last from the chains of obsession. The theatre had emptied. but the lessons lingered in each life touched by truth. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully and leaned back in his chair. Why do people perform, rather than simply reveal the truth? He murmured to the empty room, as if addressing an invisible audience. Because the mask offers comfort. It shields us from vulnerability, from judgment, from the raw exposure of our deepest desires and fears. In elegant society, especially in those glittering 1930s circles of country houses and post-Christmas gatherings, the script is written long before the curtain rises. One must play the grieving daughter, the loyal nephew, the charming friend, the innocent artist. Society demands these roles, and we rehearse them until they feel almost natural. Yet the body knows better. Guilt always betrays the actor through small, uncontrollable signs. A steady hand where tremor should appear, a dry eyes when tears are expected, a voice too smooth when emotion should catch. He sipped the tisane, its warm bitterness grounding his thoughts. Consider how greed performed as rightful inheritance at Ravenscourt. Resentment wore the costume of family loyalty. Obsession dressed itself as affectionate friendship. Cunning hid behind artistic detachment. Each mask was chosen for protection, yet each grew heavy under pressure. The constant rehearsal exhausts the spirit. Eventually the actor forgets a line, or the body rebels with the telling gesture. That is when Poirot directs the spotlight. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction as he arranged a few papers symmetrically on the table. I'm reminded of the Ackroyd case, where the murderer performed shock with such technical perfection that even I was momentarily deceived. I had practiced before mirrors, the widening eyes, the dropped jaw, the appropriate catch in the voice. Every movement was calculated. Yet when the news was delivered, he reached for his cigarette case with hands too steady, too controlled. A genuinely stunned man fumbles. The little grey cells noted the discrepancy immediately. In that affair, as at Ravenscourt, the psychology beneath the performance told the real story. The body speaks a language no rehearsal can fully silence. Micro-movements, breathing patterns, the way fingers tremble or remain unnaturally still. These are the truths that emerge when the mask slips. He continued, voice soft but intense. The masks society demands are many and varied. In the world of wealth and refinement, one cannot simply be angry, afraid, or ambitious. One must perform grief with elegance, a loyalty with restraint, innocence with wide eyes. These performances protect social standing, but they isolate the soul. Truth requires courage, the courage to be seen as one truly is, with all the flaws and contradictions. At Ravenscourt, the pressure of investigation forced the actors to drop their costumes. Some felt relief, others faced justice. But all were changed. The psychology of revelation is powerful. Once the mask falls, the weight lifts, even if consequences follow. Genuine emotion, though painful, restores order to the human heart. Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands. Guilt manifests physically because the body cannot lie as convincingly as the face. The murderer's steady hand when describing horror was the fatal tell. The others revealed their secrets through averted eyes, trembling fingers, or voices that suddenly cracked. These are not mere clues, they are windows into the soul. People wear masks because they fear the discomfort of authenticity. Yet truth ultimately triumphs over performance. It needs no rehearsal. It stumbles naturally, while lies flow too smoothly until the strain becomes unbearable. He paused, tilting his egg-shaped head as he reflected deeper. In every theatre of crime, The same pattern repeats. Humans are actors by necessity, performing roles assigned by family, society, and self-image. Love performs as indifference. Hate wears loyalty. Fear dresses as confidence. But the little grey cells cut through the costumes. Poirot sees behind the masks because he understands the psychology. Why we lie out of fear, greed, pride, or desperate love. How guilt betrays us in unguarded moments, and what we reveal when we believe no one watches. At Ravenscourt, the elegant Art Deco setting provided the perfect stage, but truth turned it into a place of genuine transformation. The apartment felt peaceful now, the distant sound of London traffic, a gentle reminder that life continued beyond this particular drama. Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve and smiled faintly. The curtain has fallen on this performance. The actors have left the stage, some wiser, some punished, all altered. Dear listener, you have watched carefully with Poirot. You have learned to observe the small gestures, the missed cues, the moments when the mask slips. You have seen how greed performs as grief, how obsession wears the face of friendship, and how truth needs no rehearsal. He raised his cup in a small toast. The psychology. It is everything. Order and method in the little grey cells reveal what polished performances try to hide. Until the next theatre of crime calls, mes amis, Poirot will be watching. Observe the world around you. Watch who plays their role too perfectly. Listen for the lines that sound too rehearsed. And remember, every actor eventually forgets their lines when the spotlight of truth shines bright. The tisane had cooled slightly, but the satisfaction in Poirot's eyes remained warm. The case was closed. The human drama had played out, as it always does, with masks falling and truth taking its final bow. Until the next theatre of crime, mes amis. Poirot watches always.